Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the inaugural Stewards of Success Cannabis and Hemp program. We are very excited for today's webinar, and today we have joint venture company, Rep, Sapphire Risk Advisory Group, UCS Advisors, and Quality Control Analytics. And to kick us off is Tom Kowalski of Rep.
Thanks, Dr. Dave, for that energetic welcome. Hey, everybody, and thanks for coming today. We really appreciate you being here, and welcome. I hope you're all ready to learn something. That said, I'm proud to present you with the Stewards of Success. Actually, this is our inaugural event, and our team was conceptualized over the summer and began as a security event for the cannabis industry, and partnering with Haley Glover at Sapphire Risk, which is here with us today. That was around August, right, Haley?
Yeah, it was. And we kind of discussed doing a webinar, and, this is in the middle of COVID, and we just kind of thought about bringing in other people who were passionate in the industry and could really help along the whole process of opening up a facility.
Right. As Haley said, we intended to have one event, but, this information is very complex, and we sought to bring in experts, right? And that's where Ann Brum, Ashley Boucher, and David Kunick come into the picture. We have synergy, and we already knew that there was a wealth of information to provide to all of you. However, this information is hard to come by. If you Google it, nothing comes up, right? Very, very few information comes up. So that's why we're here, and that's why we formulated this group, to create a trusted platform to deliver you valuable information, right? And so let's dive in, right? Who are the Stewards of Success? We empower the cannabis and hemp industry with information and to help you grow your business and to be successful. So each of us bring a unique perspective and accumulated experience into the industry. Our mission here is to build a trusted platform, as I mentioned, with a goal to arm you with vital information. Today, you're going to learn how to protect your investment. So new and existing business owners 12 months and under, and investors alike. Now let me get a show of hands in the chat. Who's ready to learn something? Type in "learn" in the chat, and let's move forward and introduce you to the team. So I'm Tom Kowalski, the founder and CEO of Rep. What is Rep? Digital and Protection and Reputation Advisory firm. We specialize in digital managing risk. I have almost 20 years of PR, media risk analysis, and cybersecurity experience that are built into my business. I help keep clients out of the news, and I protect and defend reputations and safeguard assets. My goal here today is to walk you through and deliver you and increase your cybersecurity knowledge, because I don't want you to have a breach. We want you to stay in business, and we want your business to thrive. Next up, introducing you Ashley Boucher from Quality Control Analytics. Ashley?
Hi, thank you, Tom. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. My name is Ashley Boucher. I am with Quality Control Analytics. I am the founder and owner of the first responsible vendor trainer accredited in the state of Massachusetts for the cannabis industry. I am so happy that you are all here today. Today, I'll be talking about training and how important that is to maintain compliance. My company has successfully trained over 1,000 of Massachusetts cannabis agents. And I am so excited to be part of this group, and I would love to hand it over to Ann Brum from Joint Venture.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Miss Ashley, another Massachusetts native. Love the work that you're doing, and I'm so pleased that you all took the time out today to join us for this very valuable conversation. As Tom mentioned, my name is Ann Brum, and I am the founder of Joint Venture & Co. We are a B2B boutique growth agency where we work with direct-to-consumer cannabis and wellness brands here in the beautiful Northeast. We have about a 10-year experience in the wellness and cannabis industry, and we're also proud to be the first women business enterprise and Portuguese business enterprise certified by Massachusetts, serving the cannabis, hemp, and wellness space. Looking forward to digging into all these details and how we can help you all protect, inform, and preserve your valuable investment into this industry. I would like to go ahead and ask Dr. David to go ahead and introduce himself.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. And once again, my name is Dr. David Koenig, the CEO and co-founder of UCS Advisors and Investor Relations. And as Ann just mentioned, part of the Stewards of Success is to protect, inform, and preserve. My background is I'm actually a doctor of physical therapy, and I have a second doctorate in healthcare management, but I'm a serial entrepreneur who has successfully started 13 different companies in the last 17 years and has actually sold 7 of them. I've been involved in the cannabis sector for more than a decade, and I actually took a company public back in 2009, where we were one of the first 1,500 publicly traded cannabis companies in America. Why is this so important? Is that we're going to be talking about how to protect your investment, how to attract investors, and things to think about over today's webinar and tomorrow's webinar. But with that being said, last but not least, I'd like to introduce the infamous Haley Glover of Sapphire Risk Advisory Group.
Thank you, Dr. Dave. My name is Haley Glover. I'm the Senior Security Consultant at Sapphire Risk Advisory Group. We are a nationwide consulting firm with focus on security. We help with the security section of state applications as well as the build out of a facility. So anything with alarms, access control, surveillance, standard operational procedures, we can help you take care of. So I guess let's go ahead and get into the why. Are you new or wanting to get into the cannabis and hemp industry? Whether you've been in the business for 12 months or less, or simply are interested in applying for a license, it's really important to have the right tools in order to build a thriving business. The cannabis industry is young and new, and so are you. It is crucial to partner with specialists who understand your specific needs and the common pitfalls to help you grow and create a profitable and successful business. Starting any new business is scary, but having the right advisors on your team is vital to your success. Now let's jump right into it. I'll let Dr. Dave take it from here.
Great. Thank you so much. So with that being said, we are going to be talking about workplace compliance. We're going to be talking about workplace safety, but let's just call a spade a spade. All this costs money. And that's why I'm starting off today's webinar to talk about the 3 key green nuggets of investor relations. So if you have a pen and paper, I would take it out right now to write a few couple important notes. Something we say here at UCS Advisors Investor Relations is we teach all our clients green nuggets of investor relations. And these green nuggets of information will really help you secure the funding you need for your company. So green nugget number 1, failure to plan is planning to fail. This is 2020, people. It's almost 2021. There's a lot of data out there in the cannabis industry. This isn't like it's back in 2000 or 2005 where a lot of people were trying to get involved in this industry. There's a lot of data out there. So before you go out and before you present to any potential investor, make sure you do your due diligence. Make sure you go to maybe like a Bazinga conference or attend these free other investor conferences for cannabis and hemp to learn what other companies are doing. Make sure you have your lawyer already in place. Make sure you have your accountant in place. Make sure you know if you're going to do a dispensary or an extraction facility or a grow house, that you have your security in place ahead of time. Green nugget number 2, know your audience. Why do I bring this up? Because depending how much money you're raising, are you going to pitch the amount of money you need to a venture capitalist, to your best friend, or maybe to a group of smaller investors, of friends and family? It's really important that you know who you are presenting your information to, because that goes back to step number 1 and green nugget number 1. Failure to plan is planning to fail. Now, people always ask us here at UCS Advisors, Dr. David, what is the number 1 mistake people make before they start a company? And I say it's green nugget number 3. What is your exit strategy? Is your goal to get acquired? Is your goal to maybe build multiple locations? Or is your goal maybe just to make a couple $100,000 a year from your business? There is no wrong answer. However, though, if you don't have an exit strategy and if you don't show an investor how they're going to get their money back, you're not going to raise any money at all. So reviewing the three green nuggets of investor relations. Number one, failure to plan is planning to fail. Make sure you have all your ducks in a row first. Number two, know who you're presenting to for your audience. You might want to adjust your presentation depending who you're presenting to. And number three, what is your exit strategy? What's your ultimate goal for this business? You just can't go into any business and say, oh, hey, well, I'm just gonna make a ton of money and that's it. You have to really decide where you want to go and what you want to do. Now, with that being said, and now that we gone over the funding, what I'm going to do is we're going to have Ashley come on now and talk about the importance of workplace compliance and workplace safety. Because I'll tell you right now, every investor is going to look at your business plan to make sure you're thinking about security and you have the money in your budget to have the right security people. And Ashley, why don't you take it away?
Hi, thank you, Dr. Dave. That was amazing, right? So you start your business, now what? One of the most overlooked portions of regulatory and compliance in the cannabis industry is Osha training. Osha training is for your occupational safety and health of all of your employees. That training should include pieces like your emergency training, your exit training. How are your employees getting out of the building in the case of an emergency? Operational noise training. This is one of the most overlooked portions of training that's required for regulatory and compliance workplace safety. Why is it overlooked? Osha training is your number one overlooked training in the cannabis industry because it is thought to be a federal organization and it doesn't apply to the cannabis industry because cannabis is not federally legal. However, OSHA training and OSHA safety practices are extremely important in the industry because often those are state regulated. And because they're state regulated, you're required to ensure that your OSHA training and your OSHA compliance is met in your facility. Now, what happens if you don't follow OSHA protocols? Fines. Now, you raised all this capital, as Dr. David was speaking about. You don't want it to go to fines. OSHA fines can range from a little over $13,000 to over $130,000. So those fines can definitely add up. Make sure that you have OSHA training and your OSHA safety and compliance in place. Now that OSHA training will vary based on what type of establishment you're opening up. As Dr. David said, you want to know before you get into business, what type of establishment are you opening up? Cultivation will have different requirements than manufacturing or extraction. And same for your retail. And now we have delivery services coming online here in Massachusetts. They're already online in other places throughout the country. However, what are the OSHA requirements for safety and training for the cannabis industry? Now, if you go to the OSHA website, they're not going to say cannabis specific OSHA regulations. It's a little bit of work here. So you have to kind of do some digging. If you are opening up an extraction or manufacturing website, you're going to have to look, establishment, you're going to have to look at those different regulations specific for manufacturing. So unfortunately, it's not cut and dry and it requires a little bit of work. However, it is absolutely necessary and very important, especially to protect your bottom line. Now, some states like Massachusetts have mandated state training for the cannabis agents that are working in that state. Massachusetts requires that all cannabis establishments handling adult use cannabis have a responsible vendor training certification. Now, not all states require that. Some have it as an option. Some require it. Here in Massachusetts, they do require it. So you'll want to make sure that you have your training with an accredited trainer. Job-specific training. Now, you have spent a lot of money opening up and investing into your establishment. It is really important that your employees have that same vision, right? So your job-specific training will maintain your compliance. Your job-specific training, how are your employees interacting with consumers if they are retail agents? How are your employees growing your product? You don't want to be blindsided by a loss of crop, right? It takes 8 to 12 weeks to produce that plant. You want to make sure that your employees are well trained and are well knowledge in how to actually care for that crop that will end up being your profit. Manufacturing or extraction, there are varying manufacturing and extraction techniques. Some of those include the use of your LPGs or your liquid petroleum gases like butane. Having training so that your employees know how to properly handle those gases or potentially hazardous chemicals is very important. And that ties back into some of your OSHA training as well. We could spend the whole day talking specifically about training. And before I hand it over to Haley, I just want to say documentation. Everything in your establishment and all of your works should be documented. That includes training. You want to make sure that you're including training documentation in all of those documents you're handling in your establishment. You want to include who trained the establishment or your employees, what was the training, and the length of the training. That's just a highlight of a few of the key things you want to include on your documentation when you're handling training documents. But you want to make sure you document everything, not just for training, but for all of your compliance related activities as well, including how you're maintaining your physical security. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to Haley, who is going to discuss that.
Thank you, Ashley. So a new operation often gets caught up with changes being made within the business and may tend to forget some of those small steps in day-to-day operations. One of your best practices within a business is to continue to uphold your standard operational procedures. This will lessen your chances at having any mishaps occur, and things like inventory management is critical, and it shouldn't take long for an employee to notice if something seems off. There should never be just one single person who's overseeing this inventory regulation. Having some sort of checks and balances system in place will help prevent one person from having the ability to alter any of that information. And they can be trying to cover themselves or even another employee. Management should review all of the reports for any irregular documentation. Just like Ashley said, that documentation is absolutely key. And when the time comes for your audit, having a gap in things like your surveillance history or your access control audits or your inventory, that could cause you to lose your license or even close your business indefinitely. So having a security manager in place can also help with the regulation and implementation of those SOPs. These managers should work with all employees who oversee your business and provide training on things like how security systems work and how they operate, as well as emergency preparedness. They will also provide the oversight over the security guards at the facility and have that constant evaluation of the security plan for the continuous improvement of proactive responsiveness. And this can be changing over time, just kind of depending on how your business is run. So some of the biggest threats within your business are that 95% of all businesses experience employee theft. Roughly 80% of financial and product loss in the marijuana industry comes from within the company. And 33% of all business bankruptcies are caused by internal theft. And next slide, please. So some of your best practices, you want to have a culture of honesty in the workplace. You want to have good hiring practices. So doing background checks for your upper management, anyone who's going to be in control of your facility is extremely important. These are the people who are going to help you run your business. And again, they might have access to your alarm system, your access control system, and your surveillance systems. So it's important that you have somebody on staff that's trustworthy and professional to help implement the best practices. You want to have well-defined policies and a zero tolerance. Training of your employees is crucial. Just like Ashley was saying, this is something that can help your business really be successful, is having proper training for all of your employees, especially that upper management. You want them to fully comprehend what their tasks are and to be prepared for all the scenarios. If an employee is caught stealing, for example, they shouldn't have another opportunity to do so. If the employee is given a second chance to steal, this might also give other employees the idea that they'll get a second chance if they commit the same crime. You want to have open and frequent communication. Communicating with your employees can help your business tremendously. Something we like to recommend to our clients at Sapphire is to implement something like an anonymous hotline. A lot of the times when employees might be nervous to report an internal theft, or they're afraid that they might lose trust of their other coworkers, this is kind of something that would provide a safe way to communicate this or other types of poor work behavior. So that's something that's really important, is having that continuous communication. You want to remove opportunities of theft. Training your staff and making sure that they understand that this is an industry that is highly regulated. And again, it's not federally legal, so this is something that's going to differ state by state, but they really need to understand that they will be on camera, they will be watched all the time. And so having these cameras in place throughout your facility is crucial, and you should have redundancy anywhere cash or cannabis is handled or stored. There should be no opportunities for theft in your facility. And lastly, always have a backup plan. All systems should have a backup of some sort, even more so with your surveillance system though. No employee should ever have access to delete or make changes to footage. And even if they were to go in, you should have a backup of some sort so you can still pull that footage and review it. But in most instances, it's best to call your security company or whoever installed it to assist with pulling or viewing that footage. Having different logins for individuals can also help identify who may have made those changes to the system. And remember that during your auditing process, surveillance footage may be requested, and you will have to report if there's something missing or wrong, like the date or timestamp. And again, if there's something that the state notices, you could lose your license or be required to close your doors. And obviously, we all know that this takes a lot of time, a lot of money, and a lot of effort. So you really want to protect your investment. And with that, I will pass it on to Tom to talk about data security.
Thanks, Haley, for that. This is a good segue into cybersecurity. You know, physical and cybersecurity often overlap, and they connect in the virtual and physical world. A lot of these points that Haley covered are in cybersecurity and apply to cybersecurity as well. The common theme today we're talking about is being ill prepared, right? So not having a plan, but having the right advisors on your team is critical to your success and your business. So before I dive in, I have some fun facts, or not so fun facts, right? So October is Cybersecurity Awareness Month, so this information is very timely. And then point two, 60% of small and medium-sized businesses who experienced a hack have gone out of business, right? So the average cybersecurity breach cost is almost $4 million. Are you willing to risk your investment? We didn't think so. So this is why we created the platform, right? So cybersecurity is just one of those many things that new business owners often forget about, especially in the cannabis industry. And, it's most critical in the virtual world we live in. Most cannabis business owners do not perform a risk assessment. So right here, I created a Venn diagram for you. And actually, this is a great exercise that each and every one of you could deploy within your business and analyze it at every single layer. The diagram shows the leading threats, vulnerabilities, and assets that are at stake in the cannabis industry. So we quickly go over this. The leading threats, you might have heard this term before, social engineering. So a good example of that is phishing, one of those fraudulent links looking to get your passwords or usernames. Another example is ransomware. Personal devices. Now, we're working a remote workforce right now due to the pandemic. However, before the pandemic, the cannabis industry has a lot of its employees working remotely. So that's a huge risk to the business. Having a mobile device and getting a phishing link on it through social media, which is quite common, that's a huge vulnerability right there. Extortion, right? So having, information that's being used against you. Haley covered this before. Cannabis industry is required by law to retain video footage, right? So if you're retaining video footage, and let's just say, you know, in the case of TH Suite hack in 2019, I think over 85,000 records were stolen, right? Well, it was found in that hack that a lot of those customer records where government officials' IDs were stored. Well, if you're a government official, right, and this is a federally unregulated industry, and it's a Schedule I drug, and you have a government employee or a high net worth person or a high profile person or even a politician coming in and they're caught on video and you're retaining that information, that's what cyber thieves are looking for, that information to hack you, to get it, and then use it against that person to extort money. So it's really important that you have a secure network and that you're protecting and encrypting the data of your customers. It'll put you out of business. Typical vulnerabilities, the Internet of Things, IoT controls. So what is that? Seed management, temperature controls that are connected to the internet. You know, is a common hack. Data retention. So we went over this a little bit before. Customer data applications. And then thirdly, humans. Haley covered a bit of this before, and it's similar in physical security as it is with cybersecurity. Humans are the result of over 95% of breaches. So that's a huge number, right? We are our greatest weakness, but you know, cyber thieves exploit, you know, using psychology 101, the oldest trick in the book that marketing and salespeople use. Well, it's human emotion, right? So it's fear, curiosity, urgency. They're using that against us to get information from us. And then, you know, third, the common assets, right? So what is that? That's what is at stake for theft from the business. And the top three are intellectual property and customer data, cash and cryptocurrency. So it's not a federally recognized industry. So the FDIC does not protect money, right? There's no banks that will exchange money. And so that leaves intermediaries or app-based, or commonly app-based, and they're getting hacked left and right. And then lastly, inventory. So, you know, Haley covered this before as well. Common is employee theft. Now, cyber criminals aren't after the Mary Jane, but employees are, right? So we have to keep that in mind. And then bringing it all together, risks to the business. You know, every business is different. So your cyber program, it's very, very important to have a customized approach because your business is not any, you know, similar to someone else's, and so on and so forth. You know, and again, the common theme here is to have a plan and to have a backup of the plan. That's critical in cybersecurity, to have that concrete strategy that's unique to your business and that incorporates risk assessment, the proper technology, awareness training, and then crisis remediation planning. And part of that, as I just mentioned, is cyber awareness. That's a solid foundation, as I say all the time, of the house. Right? Because if employees aren't aware of the risks and implications, then, you know, that leaves you open for a hack, right? And then thirdly, not understanding cybersecurity or privacy issues. You know, a common one is the Hipaa laws, right? So again, bringing that full circle with the federally unrecognized industry, a lot of dispensaries and cannabis business owners don't think that they're bound by Hipaa laws. But if you're getting a prescription from a doctor, you are bound by Hipaa laws and you need to deploy those practices. So it's a good idea to understand the regulations and then cybersecurity laws, data protection laws within the US and globally for that matter. And then moving on to the next slide. So here are the implications, right? So a breach will put you out of business. When the average breach is about $4 million, that's not something you want to risk. You're risking financial losses, your reputational issues will cause harm to your credibility. And then number two, customers and investors alike need to trust your business. So if you're not protecting your business in this day and age in the virtual world, you know, people will start to question that, especially investors. You know, Dr. Dave is going to hand you money for your business. He wants to understand that you're protecting your customers' data and protecting the investment that he's going to hand you, right? So think more along the lines of insurance for assurance. to protect your customers. And lastly, and I talked about this before, is staying abreast of the regulation, because those penalties are steep, right? So they can range from $5 to $50 per record. So if you're, the TH suite breach, which was $85,000 records at $50 per record, that's a huge fine to your business. So best practices: protect your data, raise awareness through education, and plan for the unexpected. Because cyber implications, they're often forgotten by most, especially in the cannabis and hemp industry, where it's often too late. So who wants to develop a crisis mitigation plan and make it up as they go, right? Not me, and certainly not you. So, take a proactive approach and have a cyber program in place. It'll protect you, it'll protect your customers, and it'll set you up for success, right? With that, I'm going to turn the floor over to Ann Brum, who's going to drill down in the most important topic of today, business development. And that fuels every single component that we discussed today. Without further ado, Ann?
Thank you, Tom. Yes, it is. Why go through all of this if we don't have things in place, we don't have a strong foundation built. So I really wanted to kind of hone in and kind of wrap up everything that everyone's been sharing when it comes to funding, your compliance, your physical and cybersecurity. And now it's a great point to bring up that you constantly have to be thinking about growth. Folks will determine that's, related to revenue. It can be related to growing your team. It can go to the second phase of fundraising. I mean, there's always a constant cycle of growth. And I really wanted to share this quote by Steve Jobs, as it gives some great insight on kind of reverse engineering the results that you're looking to attain when it comes to growing your business. So there's an old Wayne Gretzky quote that I love: "I skate to where the puck is going to be, not where it has been." And we've always tried to do that at the Apple Store since the very, very beginning, and we always will. Steve Jobs. So when we're thinking about business development, I'm excited to kind of dig into this comprehensive conversation, because business development is very much a part of your successful launch of your cannabis and hemp business. And by this end of this segment, I'm hoping that you'll have a strong understanding of what it means to have a business development plan that will shore up the time and the resources and everything you've done to plan to invest into your startup. So, and as you can see, business development can carry a lot of different action plans. But for the purpose of today, we'll be focusing on business development as it relates to marketing your startup, because marketing is a very comprehensive project. There's a lot to it. A lot of folks can say it's sales, it's PR, it's social media, earned media. We're going to just talk about comprehensively marketing. And I'd like to go ahead and ask you, for those who are in attendance and those who are watching afterwards, is just think back and remember to that moment that brought you to the reason of why you started this business to begin with. Was it an event? Was it an epiphany? Something that you saw, something that somebody said, a story that you heard, some incredible relief that someone was able to experience by having access to cannabis and or hemp. Whatever that moment was, that is the remarkable, tangible, emotional timestamp that led you to say, I'm doing this. I'm putting myself out there. This is important, and I'm going to make this happen. Just want you to know that that's your why. Understand to always return back to, why did I do this? Why is this important? Why, as my team and I starting this business, as you have seen, it takes a lot of time and energy and resources to participate in the regulated cannabis and hemp industry. There are different laws. There are different local, state, and federal laws that you have to think about. So it can become very frustrating, and remembering your why really helps to connect those dots backwards, anticipating where you want to be and designing it so that having a plan in place and designing it so that you're absolutely going to reach it. It may not be a straight line, it may be a little up and down, but having a meaningful and deliberate plan that executes on why you got into this business to begin with is really, really important. There's a whole lot that goes into it, and this is not an overnight thing. It takes time, and I think there's a lot of shortcomings for teams that focus on these short term, like for the next 6 months or 9 months, I'm looking to get, you know, this email marketing or get up my website or, you know, get our social media platforms going, which is all good and stuff. But you also have to think about the long term and really think about the impact that you're looking to make, the people that you're looking to connect with, and the people that you're looking to serve. For example, in Massachusetts, before the business models were available, so when you were applying for some sort of license application in the regulated industry, they had to submit their business model. And it was funny because a lot of now they don't do that. What was funny is that a lot of these business models didn't show any sort of bankrolling of funding for marketing, branding, advertising, none of that. And I think the misconception is a lot of folks like, oh, it's cannabis, it's hemp, it will, you know, sell itself. I'm like, yeah, sure, maybe for the short term, but then once competition comes in and you missed out on this major opportunity to start really cultivating deep, meaningful relationships with your audience or your consumer base, you know, once we see interstate commerce come up, those sort of smaller shops that weren't thinking about it are just going to get pummeled by these very established brands that have a proper plan in place to execute on their overall business development plan. Just a quick tip. Think of your why as your North Star again. Just overall, it's just how you're planning to grow. Who do you want to serve? Allow it to guide your overall strategy in building an equitable, sustainable, and profitable business. Okay. And like really having that be as part of your company culture, your that sort of attitude you have both within the company and with your public, with your audience, with your consumer. So really important. We also need to think about filling the gap. You know, the power of relationships are amazing, and that sort of networking with reliable, responsive people is incredibly valuable. In fact, I don't think I would have been here if Haley and I hadn't connected and we weren't responsive with one another, and if she saw that I wasn't responsive and showing up or returning an email or a phone call within a timely manner, I'm not sure she would have invited me to participate in this event. And being reliable, being trustworthy, being a decent human is really important in this space, especially for this emerging industry. We can really set the bar, set the stage for people to show up with integrity, with honesty, and also with brilliancy. Like just without having to do all that, we can really focus on building an amazing product or amazing service or an amazing experience that you're looking to curate with your audience and or consumer. So, and building a business takes a team of skilled and talented people, and there's not one person who can do everything well. So you want to look for those gaps within your company and within your team that needs that sort of growth support. And we want growth support that has complements and aligns with your company's values and your company's, you know, goals on complement with adhering to a comprehensive marketing strategy. So invest your time into resources, into the communities that are important to your company's why and its alignment with your overall mission. So that can be your local organizations like, you know, Chamber of Commerce or state and federal organizations. You know, you want to think about the long term in mind, and having that consistent engagement is hugely important. You know, not just your municipal municipal officials, your local leaders, your advocates, industry professionals, wellness professionals. People will remember who you are, how you show up, and they'll want to do business with you. They will want to support your growth. They will want to participate in how you're bringing your product or service into the market. So a little quick tip is, with the long term in mind, think about, we're phasing it out. And I want you to know that even though we have this long-term plan in mind, that chunking this out into phases is really going to help serve when we get this wave of things that end up happening in the industry, like completely the deck of cards are thrown up and it's completely redone. For example, when we had COVID happen for shutdown here in Massachusetts, we were the only state out of any state with the legal regulated adult use market. We were the only state that shut down for about 8 weeks or so. And with an unsuccessful lawsuit against the governor for opening this up. So even though you could long-term plan for the next quarter or two, or next few quarters, anything can really happen. And I'm seeing folks really just kind of scale that process back as far as a 90-day is concerned, and start kind of modeling and chunking that out as you're moving through the process, as regulations are changing, as updates are changing, as markets are changing, as the mainstream and the general public and their consideration around cannabis hemp is also changing. So I just wanted to say that as well. And lastly, we really want to do this by design. You will think about how you map out the process, and you definitely want to invest into prioritizing what's important to your company and your team, and how to tailor that to your unique business needs. So whether it's identifying a model, a system, and what those inputs are, like technology and software, or SOPs like we spoke about today. And there are specific regulations per market that absolutely speak to marketing, advertising, branding, sponsorship. Like in Massachusetts, we have an 85-21 rule, where if it's a public display on a billboard, you have to prove that 85% of that viewership is 21 years of age or older. So as far as your mainstream broadcasting on TV, on radio, on a billboard, it can be very, very difficult to meet that requirement, as well as it's costly. Like having a billboard on for 3 months is you're looking at $20,000 to $30,000. Personally, what we advise our clients is invest that 20 to 30K, phase it out, and invest it back into your local community, your regional community. Align yourself with leaders in the community that are in alignment with your company's overall mission and goals, and start getting that in place immediately. Spend that money locally. It will go a long, long way. And that's what I would consider growth by design. You are intentionally, deliberately creating these amazing relationships that will naturally build a pipeline and build your brand equity over and over and over again. And folks will talk about your brand. They will recommend your brand, your product or your service that you're bringing into the market. They will be your marketing team. So please consider that. Absolutely. We find that very successful with our brands that we work with that are either entering into the market or New England brands that are going into the national market. That is definitely what we recommend, and is almost a standard that we require. You'll also learn with your resources, where do your people cluster? Like, how are you going to grow with these people that you're looking to connect with, your consumer base, your audience, as well as the professionals that you're going to be working with. There are lots of services. There are lots of pieces to the puzzle to make your startup launch and come online. So your contractors, think about everything here. Sapphire Risk Advisory, rep with Tom, for funding and with Dr. David, with compliance, with quality control analytics with Ashley. aligning yourself with these professionals is hugely important. And they also are going to be speaking about their experience with you and your brand or product or service that you're bringing out into this space. So to me, that is your competitive edge, by investing locally with these important, meaningful relationships that will pay dividends. Just the power of relationship is a real thing. And the most important relationship as a business owner is with your consumer or audience, as well as your team. Do not forget how important it is to have that culture, that respect, that camaraderie within your team. And between digital and soon to be return in-person gatherings and events, there's a plethora of spaces where you can grow before you're actually launched online. You can absolutely have these spaces that you can engage your public, your contractors, your colleagues with your brand already, so you don't have to wait to come online. So your website, I would consider a space, all your social platforms, any email marketing, text messaging, your any sort of earned media, providing any sort of public comment, live stream webinars like we're doing here today, your e-commerce site. And then when you think about in person, beyond your brick and mortar, if you are bringing a product into the market, we also have wellness events. Like I just co-produced a yoga and cannabis retreat in Vermont. That was a small sold out COVID precaution. And these men and women were absolutely thrilled to be in a safe space to engage with cannabis under the guidance of yours truly. So these sort of experiential engaging events will be a thing, especially when it comes to cannabis and hemp, and allowing these people to really connect with the product and the experience of it all. Let's also not forget about educational events. Anything to do with growth development, business development is foundationally is education centric. Okay. So would absolutely make it seem like you're talking to someone brand new pretty much all the time. And then also fundraising events has been really fun. Prior to COVID, I was communicating with someone about a Crohn's disease fundraiser, and we were merging the cannabis and mainstream to come together and support this cause. Another important event I was a part of was the Boston Center for Arts, and they have an annual fundraiser. And myself, along with the Massachusetts Cannabis Control Commissioner, we were on the host committee to go ahead and bridge the cannabis community of professionals and advocates with the art community in Boston. So there's tremendous opportunity to really start bridging the mainstream with really meaningful events and engagement beyond your traditional thinking of a brick and mortar. So ultimately, I'd like to say, just talk it out, have these ideation sessions, draw it out, flush out your ideas. You want to match what you have for resources and skill set, including budgets and timelines, and start looking into piecing in that those resources to execute your business development plan. And meaningful participation in the market absolutely needs to be designed, in my opinion. It can absolutely be curated with a team that's creative and has a strategy and a budget, where a launch really sets the tone for how your product or service or business is going to be showing up. So research into what it is to have a strong brand, and that sort of feeling that you're looking to elicit when people experience your product or service. And absolutely, that's going to complement your why, that North Star. So I'd like to leave you here with one last tip, is to regularly schedule quarterly time to focus and review these overall growth strategies and adjust and pivot as needed. So there's, you have your standard data and metrics from the digital side or SEO. However, there's real growth that happens in between, like the reading between the lines, the doing these sort of collaborative events that we're doing today. When your plan is designed with care and consistent attention, that absolutely will lead to your potential of first to market and collaboration opportunities. So do not wait to participate. Don't hesitate to start your strategy when it comes to growing your business before you even launched. Like, already have this ready to go. So now that you're on your way for a successful launch and have a little bit of a business development plan ready to go and identify what that means for your business to grow into the market, we're hoping that you feel informed and ready to protect and preserve your startup. So now I'd like to go ahead and bring Tom back into the conversation.
Thanks, Anne, for that insight. Showing up with integrity and honesty. That is a good tip. So can I get a raise of hand in the chat who learned something today, and type in SOS if you did. So great. You got your funding, you learned about regulations, and hold on a second. There we go. You learned about regulations and safety practices. You're all buttoned up with physical, cybersecurity, funding, regulatory, business development, and you know the importance of sound business development practices and just covered. So let's just bring this whole thing together, right? Have a solid plan, number one, and strategy. A proactive approach is always going to set you up for sustainable success. And that's our mission, right? To set you up for sustainable success. You know, I had a family friend growing up, and she always reminded me, good is good. So having that advisory team right by your side, you can't go wrong, right? Understand every aspect of the industry, your company, and the regulations that government. You know, we had a lot of common denominators between our discussion today, and it's planning, but a lot of regulations because this is a complex industry, and it's challenging, right? And you know, you need a team of experts to advise you properly and to keep you up to speed. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't do your own research as well. So keep yourself updated and aware on those ever-changing regulations in the industry. And then thirdly, partner with advisors and build a trusted relationship with them because they are an extension of your team. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to join us. We hope you learned something. We thank you. Thank you. Stick with us. We're going to do a Q&A session and we're going to answer some questions. But before we do that, I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Dave, who's going to brief you on day 2, which is second session tomorrow for existing business owners. Dr. Dave?
Thank you so much, Tom. And thank you everyone so far for all the great information you've provided. Now, as Tom said, yes, we're still going to do question and answers. So I'll tell everyone right here the following. You have 5, I repeat, you have 5 key people here that could really answer a lot of the questions that you have, whether it's quality control, how much you maybe should budget for your security, what kind of security you might need. I'll tell you right now, to have someone of Tom Kowalski's reputation and for as long as he's been doing his job, to have someone like this to be able to pick his brain, I would highly encourage everyone to ask as many questions as you have. But with that being said, part of what we said at UCS Advisors is green nugget number 1, failure to plan is planning to fail. So if you're someone that's going to really take this seriously and you really want to open up a business, you might want to check out tomorrow's webinar, because tomorrow's webinar, we're going to talk about what to think about when you've had a business for over a year. So if you've already been in the cannabis sector, you already have a business, and that business has been up and running and operational for more than 12 months, you might want to check in tomorrow and check out this free event, because you're going to learn what the next steps are for you to consider. So with that being said, do we have any questions at all from our audience? If you do, please type it right into the chat room, and we'd love to sit here and go over it. And while people are writing their questions, I actually have a question for Tom. Just get it started. So Tom, my question to you is this. What are the top 3 mistakes you see people make in the first 6 months of opening a new business, in your opinion, Tom? The top 3 most common mistakes.
Not considering a cybersecurity strategy. So, you know, I covered that before, and it's just a common mistake. not just in cannabis industry, is forgetting to have a plan. So that's what we talked about before. And, even if, tomorrow we'll talk about this too, but I'll just loop it in. Existing business owners have, the basics in cybersecurity. Well, what's the plan? The most important thing is the awareness. So number 2, awareness and education, right? We have employees that are, bringing mobile devices to work and so on and so forth. And it's how to adequately protect every layer of the business. And that's a common thing, because you could spend all sorts of money in the fancy technology, but is it adequately protecting you? But at the end of the day, taking that statistic, over 95% of breaches are caused by human error. If somebody clicks on a phishing link, but they don't know what a phishing link looks like, or, how to identify it, then it's all for nothing, right? You spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on technology and systems, and it can't protect you because nobody knows what a phishing link is. And then number 3 is the regulations. So, the common thing is the Hipaa compliance that I talked about before, because cannabis is not federally recognized. It's a Schedule I drug. And, common thing or belief among dispensary owners is that they don't need to adhere to any of the laws. So it's forgetting that there's data protection laws. If you're in the state of New York, or you have clients in the state of New York, you are mandated to protect and lock and encrypt your data under the new SHIELD Act, which was quietly passed and enacted, I think, March 20th of this year. Well, what was going on during that time? It was the peak of COVID, right? So nobody knows much about the SHIELD Act, but you could be fined up to $50 per record if you have a breach. And so it's the most comprehensive cybersecurity law in this.
Talking about breaches. Yeah. So Haley, this was asked by someone prior to the event. Haley, with your experience at Sapphire Risk Advisory Group, out of all the states y'all have done work in, what's the state you see that the most amount of mistakes being made for security?
Oklahoma. Oklahoma's regulations are pretty slim to none. And unfortunately, since there's not that much in place, it's probably going to take a few events to occur for those to be changed. I actually spoke to a client a few days ago, and she was mentioning that, she'd heard that nobody had actually gone out from the state to these facilities to make sure that they were implementing security. And I mean, that scares me, because, you've got to think of, if they're off of a main road or something and they have on a big billboard that, they've got cannabis there. I mean, that's kind of an easy in and out. And so I would say that Oklahoma is probably going to be the most difficult one, but hopefully those regulations will start to fall into place and they can start implementing better practices. Just, you want to protect your business again, because it still costs money in Oklahoma. So yeah, that's what I would think.
And then Ashley also, so a follow up with that, 'cause I know Ashley, you're going to add something, but Ashley, when the question you're going to answer, here's something else to think about. And I'd like to, for the audience, how much does someone budget, in your opinion, Ashley, to make sure they really have the proper OSHA compliance and safety and worker safety compliance? How much does someone really budget for that as well too, Ashley?
Well, the budget would really depend on what type of establishment you're opening up. An OSHA budget, maintaining health and safety, would vary between your manufacturing or extraction site then versus a retail site. And then even within the extraction, what are you extracting with? Butane extractions, you're looking to be extracting in a Class 1 Division 1 explosion-proof room. Everything you're entering into that room is rated for Class 1 Division 1 explosion-proof environment. So it can get.
Tell us the lowest you've ever seen for expenses in a budget, and the highest you've ever seen for expense in a budget.
For safety?
Yeah.
It's often not included in the budgets that I see, to be quite honest. Really, it's not really outlined in the budgets that I'm privy to see anyway. For the manufacturing lab that I helped set up, it was very small, and I think our budget was about $400,000. And that still lapped.
That's still a lot of money, $400,000, Ashley.
and it still lapped. When we were building it, we still needed to add more to it. A lot of that equipment gets very expensive, and I don't see, and oftentimes I don't see that the health and safety is actually really budgeted for. And part of that is because a lot of establishments don't necessarily know they have to follow those health and safety requirements. Especially, right, Haley's talking about Oklahoma. If they're not even looking for their security, what are they expecting for health and safety? So to say, you know, what is an adequate budget for your OSHA standards? Well, I'm gonna have to do a little bit of research on that, and I will share with you tomorrow what should an establishment adequately budget for. However, there's a lot of, you know, it's still a very gray area because there isn't that federal oversight for specific cannabis OSHA training. So if I'm like, well, I'm a cultivator and I'm going to implement OSHA practices, where do I go for that information? Massachusetts says you have to have OSHA training and standards, but there's no actual cannabis specific related OSHA regulation. So then I would go to agriculture.
So for the audience listening, Ashley is really bringing up something good, where one of the key parts for today's stewards of success, as we talk about, is to protect, inform, and preserve. But something that people really need to realize is that the industry is going more mainstream. You're gonna have to have good manufacturer practices. You're gonna have to have proper insurance in place. You're gonna literally be this cannabis sector is literally going to be treated like every other regulated industry in the United States of America. And here's a fun little fact for everyone: by the year 2025, 1 out of every 10 college graduates might be working in some aspect of cannabis. So when you really think about where this industry is going, this is a great example of what Ashley's saying, where we don't really know the exact cost to sit here into budgets, but it's coming down the pipeline. And whether you like it or not, this industry is going more mainstream. So where you were able to cut corners before, back in 2000, 2005, 2010, by 2025, you're not going to be able to cut those corners. And that goes back to green nugget number 1. Failure to plan is planning to fail. And I see Ann shaking her head up there. So, Ann, do you have something else to add on to this?
Yeah, you're right. So we're thinking like it's such a hyper localized kind of way. It's not uncommon when you're starting up or kind of coming into this space to be very like all consuming with your own everything on a day-to-day, all your checklists, all the meetings, all the funding, all the investor calls, all the inspections. It's very easy to kind of get very siloed in when we are looking at a state market. Eventually, we're going to have a national market, and to think it won't be an international commodity is silly. So there's already export and import agreements happening with the country of Canada, Germany, France, Croatia, Colombia. So like this is much bigger as far as the potential pipeline of where your business being properly set up for success from the get-go, including your funding, your security, your compliance, and also having a plan of how you're growing and engaging from perhaps a marketing and branding perspective is absolutely essential. Like we can see here in Massachusetts that there are these, you can see like this cluster of like locally owned and operated brands, dispensaries, and then those who are multi-state owners, multi-state operators, and you can tell who's invested into their overall marketing, their overall growth, their overall how they're consistently showing up in person as well as digitally, and including the design and the aesthetics. And I just want to say, I want to read this stat: 94% of the world's population recognizes the Coca-Cola logo. So and it takes on average 5 to 7 impressions for people to remember your brand, your product, your service. So you have to think about what you're doing to consistently engage.
And I'm going to add something to that, Ann, because one thing we talk about here at UCS Advisors is so many people get caught up on their logo before they even start their company. And you know, as a marketing person, that a logo will change a lot within a couple of years, and that's okay. That's common. So, but with that being said, everyone here that's thinking about opening up a business and we're trying to plan the budget, you know, you could sit here and make sure you add in some extra money for proper insurance. Make sure you add in for the proper security measures as well too. Now, the reason why I bring this up so much, and Leo has been making some great points here in the chat, is that overall, investors want to make sure they feel protected. They want that peace of mind. Now, if you go ahead and you already have that budget set ahead of a potential marketing person, you have that budget set ahead of someone like with Tom with Rep. If you already have that budget set aside with Haley and Sapphire Risk Advisory Group, you will be amazed how many other business plans do not have that already in their budget. And that already puts you above a step above your competitors. Because I'll tell you right now, if you all of a sudden throw out, you want $1 million and you have $200,000 set aside for marketing, a lot of investors will laugh at you because they'll say that's 20% of your money. No, drop it down to 10% for year one, because let's walk before we run. This is a step-by-step process. And we forget, you're opening up a company to make money, people. If you want to make money, that's how you're going to protect, inform, and preserve the integrity of your company. And that goes back to what we're doing here today at the Stewards of Success. So make sure everyone tunes in for tomorrow as well, too.
We have a question.
The next level.
Yeah, we do have a question here, Dr. David. I think that this is a good question for you. But I do have a question for you before I read this, and hopefully maybe you can answer them both. But do you find, so budgeting, and I found that this in my experience, that budgeting can be challenging, finding vendors that want to work with cannabis companies, and sometimes they increase the cost. That's a further challenge for your budget. I don't know if you've experienced that as well.
So great question, Ashley. And I'll answer your question first, and I see the question right here.
Okay, great.
So I'm going to use myself as an example because I originally had testing labs, and I had my first test on back in 2009 when it wasn't cool to be in cannabis. If this is back in the from 2015, yes, Ashley, people will try to upcharge you. However, though, this is 2020, almost 2021. You have a lot of choices now. And kind of like with anything else you're going to do, you always want to we always tell people get 3 quotes. Talk to 3 security companies, talk to 3 marketing companies, talk to 3 website design companies. There's no reason why you can't get 3 different quotes. And yes, I know it's some extra work, but when an investor says to you, well, why are you budgeting $20,000 for Tom Kowalski of Rep? You can say, well, we actually talked to 3 other companies, and we thought Tom had the best price point, and he also provides X, Y, and Z. So when you really go ahead now, people are not upcharging you. If anything, we talk about the experience. You really want to work with someone that has experience in the cannabis sector and knows the rules and regulations for that. So we don't really see that much anymore. And in terms of Leo's questions for the MSOs,
I just want to add something, Dr. Dave, to the point I made before, where good is good. You know, cost is not always, you know, the number one thing that you look for. We understand you have a budget, and that's incredibly important, right? But good is also good. Sometimes you pay for what you get, and it's really important to what Dr. Dave said, is getting at least 3, companies that you can compare and audit. But, you know, I recently had a situation where I had to do an assessment for a client, and she was bringing her MSP. And this guy who was working with her, an IT guy, he got on the phone and he was trying to challenge me. But my challenge for him was, why did you have the client share passwords with her staff, which is her 6 people across the globe? That presents a huge security risk. And for a global CPA, that's not a good idea, because she represents a lot of high net worth clients. And so that exposes her business to a serious breach. Well, when I raised that, of course, the security guy didn't like that, but he wasn't even a security guy, he's an IT guy. But you have to, ask the good questions, and don't be afraid to bring in an expert and have you on that call, a lot of experts will just charge you by an hour. It doesn't mean you have to hire them in an engagement, but you want to make sure that you're asking the right questions, and don't be afraid to reach out to somebody and have them join you on these calls. That's the whole purpose of, getting it done right. Just wanted to add that.
And Tom, to add on to that, you're absolutely right. I'm so happy you brought that up, where you can bring someone on just for a couple hours to review. Great. Doing investor relations, we've been brought in by for a few hours just to even help with negotiation contracts and review potential contracts. Now, Leo, you asked a huge question. And so, Leo, I hope you're paying attention. So we're going to break this down to a few different things. First off, you're absolutely correct. If you're going to partner up with an MSO, which is a multi-state operator, majority of the time you have to use their internal security or compliance director. That's absolutely true. However, though, you have every right to do your own due diligence on them. You have the right to ask to provide, to have them provide certain reports. You have every right to ask for their references as well too. Now, when it comes to looking to partner with an MSO, that's really what goes back to what I said about about one of the green nuggets is, what's your exit strategy? Is your goal to have multiple facilities? Is your goal to sit here and to have someone just really help you out financially and kind of give you like the keys to the kingdom, kind of like a franchisee? A lot of operators, especially we're seeing for dispensaries, for MSOs, the only reason why they're going for an MSO is, one, they want their money, and two, they don't want to do the extra work. They'd rather have someone that already is taking a business plan and formula that's already working, and they're just adopting, I should say, for their own facility. It's kind of like opening up another McDonald's or opening up like another Dunkin' Donuts. They've already done the hard work. It's very much turnkey. It's like being a franchisee. And that's for MSOs. However, though, and Leo, this is what I wanted to make sure, and everyone I hope is listening to this, when it comes to outside investors / operators, this goes back to your offering. What kind of offering are you going to give someone if they invest in your company? Are you offering them a loan? Are you offering them an equity piece? Are you offering them a board of directors seats? What are you exactly offering them? I see more people, and I'm going to pick on the state of Massachusetts here for a second, just because Massachusetts is very hot. And on a side note, my whole family's from Massachusetts, even though I'm in just outside New York City. But we see more people say, well, I need the right investor. I need the right partner. I go, great. This person's going to write you a check for $200,000. Do you want their money? Yes or no? Well, I don't really know. We didn't really see eye to eye on things. And then I say, great. Are you giving a board seat? Are you giving them any voting rights? How is your company set up? Is it a C Corp, an S Corp, an LLC? What rights does this investor even have? And when someone's giving you the money, you could also have the money earmarked for certain use of proceeds. So if that investor ever comes back and says, well, what'd you spend my $200,000 on? You could say, well, as per our investment contract with one another, that I told you what the money would be spent on, and here are the receipts for everything. So it's amazing how people say they want the right partner, but they say no to money because they think that people are going to control and dictate to what they're doing. And then on the flip side, and let's use even numbers. If you're raising $1 million and you have one or two investors that's going to give you the full $1 million, they're going to ask for some voting rights. They're going to ask you, and they're going to want some say in some things. And that's really making a partnership versus if you raise $1 million and instead you get 5 people to each give you $200,000, you're still in control and you still have final say. So Leo, I hope that answers your question in detail.
May I add and compliment your comment there, Dr. David? Leo, so in addition to, from an investor perspective, I'd like to just bring it back to the grassroots when you asked how should local partners vet those MSOs or outside investors and operators. I would do a little PI work and do a little research on how they're showing up in the space. I'd go even onto a Reddit platform. I would do some news search, Google, and go into a couple of news articles. Not every MSO is created equally, and they have a reputation that's national, and their reputation carries with every single, state that they're entering in or going live into that market. So it's not the only one that I've also seen this in ancillary services where they want to vet out other ancillary companies that are serving MSOs as well. So for me, like local partners is, who's involved at a local community, what kind of standing do they have with their local municipal officials? What are they doing in alignment with their overall mission and vision? How are they actually executing that in the markets that they currently exist in? Personally, for me, and as a professional, those are the sort of things I would look at for, a local partner that would represent and be an extension of that MSO's brand here.
And then let's take it another step further, Ann, and I'll be the Debbie Downer. I'll be the guy that's going to be the badass business guy.
Let's do it.
This is why you have lawyers. And you can ask your lawyer, if you go into contract this MSO, what your out clauses are. And a great example is back in 2011, we teamed up with one of the largest cannabis testing lab companies in the world. And the deal wasn't the best deal, but we had 3 different exit strategies, which would cost us very little money to break the contract if we needed to. And that's what we ended up doing. So this goes back to something that we actually teach our clients, which is called the positive power of negative preparation. And this goes back to your exit strategy as well, too, which it goes back to green nugget number 3. What's your exit strategy? If you're going to team up with a large MSO, read the fine print, talk to your lawyer. A lot of MSO operators, which this is announced in California during COVID, you had some MSO operators that forced these companies to sign the contract within 48 hours. Don't let them push you around. They need you more than you need them. But they'll sit here and they're trying to push a deal down your throat and say, you have 48 hours to sign this deal. If not, the deal's off the table. Sometimes they'd be prepared to walk away. So, use that positive power of negative preparation. This is the point of having a really good lawyer. When you're first starting your fundraising, I always tell people, find a lawyer you like and pay him that $5,000 retainer or $7,500 retainer right off the bat, because they're going to protect you right away, and they're going to have your best interest. So something else to think about. If you want to do an MSO route and you're worried, just look about what your exit strategies are. Great question, Leo.
I have a quick question for Haley with Sapphire Risk Advisory Group. Here in Massachusetts, we're about to be launching adult use delivery. We have existing medical delivery programs. However, there's so many regulations when it comes to delivery vehicles in the medical market. And we're in the final stages with our local state agency, the Massachusetts Cannabis Control Commission, when it comes to implementing and instituting the adult use delivery program. So for these operators who are going to be coming, and by the way, there's a 2 or 3 year moratorium for social equity applicants to apply for adult use delivery. So I'm curious, I'm hoping that Sapphire Risk Advisory Group has some kind of plan to engage with these social equity applicants or economic empowerment applicants. And we know that they're not an MSO funder, but I'm curious about how Sapphire Risk is in a position to engage or inform or educate those folks, and as like a preparation to work with them, let's say, when they do need your sort of services. And this actually also applies to Tom as well, because regulations require for a certain amount of hours to retain, or days to retain, that sort of streaming or information, and not all of them are secure. and both the hardware and the software can easily be compromised. Never mind if they get in a car accident, and then what the protocols and the SOPs are for that when it comes to securing product and everything you need to do afterwards. So anyways, so adult use, social equity, engagement. I'm curious about that for Massachusetts, specifically for delivery. I'm curious.
Yeah, well, I mean, not too long ago, Tony, who is our managing partner at Sapphire, he did a 8-hour course for the social equity group. And the whole thing is just to really educate and to be able to kind of break it down for what's realistic and who you need to be contacting for each part of that. I mean, for the transportation aspect, depending on where you're at, I mean, some of those regulations of how you need to connect the surveillance system on the truck and connect that to your actual facility, or even the type of GPS you want to use, if it's something that you're going to be incorporating with your seed to sale process of your whole inventory management. So it's very much so going to depend on, how we can really get involved and start that education process. The earlier, the better. And I'm hoping that we'll be able to start doing some more education courses, because that is something that is, I think, very, very important. I mean, Googling that is not going to work, so it's something that it's going to take a lot of time. It's going to take a lot of work, but I mean, we've been excited to help with the social equity group so far, and I think we'll continue to do so.
Thank you. Tom, what's your piece on how these transportation programs that are rolling out state by state can shore up their?
So my concern is, and I would assume, Anne, that this may be a mobile app that you're talking about. Now, in turn, the big problem with a lot of new companies is they're rushing DevOps to market, right? So they're rushing apps, they're rushing websites, and security, again, is an afterthought. So taking it even out of the cannabis industry, this is a common theme, right? But, all it takes is a breach. And there are regulations, especially as I talked about in New York, and then GDPR and CCPA with privacy issues. And so it's making sure that every layer of the business is protected. And this is especially important when you're developing, the business, especially a mobile delivery business, that every single layer is secure. So, the truck, let's just say Haley's Sapphire Risk comes in and they have, they're mandated by law to have, cameras, maybe by a satellite, communicating those images to a server, maybe cloud-based these days. And so it's protecting and securing and encrypting those transmissions. It's securing the app. It's securing the website. It's making sure. Now, a new thing is mandating two-factor authentication, because people don't know what that is or turn it on. So, it's making sure that that's automatically turned on. You automatically have to enable two-factor authentication, because it does protect you. Making sure that you have a complex password. I mean, how many websites have you logged in where it says, no, the password is not at least 8 characters. It needs to include, special characters and numbers and upper and lowercase. So it's mandating those sorts of things into the process to make sure that people are protecting themselves, because at the end of the day, they probably won't. They'll use a password 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The president last week had a Twitter hack, and what was his password? MAGA 2020. I mean, anybody could have guessed that. So when I talk about, securing your password and creating a complex password, it's not something that easily can be guessed, or, your favorite color, or the car that you drive, or your name, and so on and so forth.
Awesome. Thank you for that. If we're all set and we don't have any more questions for now, I'd love to have Tom go to the next slide. And there's our contact information here, our websites, our emails. This has been so wonderful to have you all here with us. If you haven't already signed up for tomorrow, same place, same time, 3 o'clock. We'll be talking about, we'll be speaking more to those who are operational and who are planning to scale. We have some great tips, some great feedback to share with you, some pitfalls to avoid, hopefully. and save you time and money and frustration, and really set up your enterprise for success. Yeah, and we're always available. We're thankful that you all were able to participate. I'd like to invite my panelists for any final words and take it from there.
Thank you everyone for joining. I'm glad you could join us today. And I think we're going to have a recording available as well. So we'll probably get that set up and sent out to everyone who attended.
Thank you, everyone.
Yep. Thanks everybody for attending. Really appreciate you being here and hope you learned something on how to protect your business and set it up for success. So appreciate you being here. And if you're able to join us tomorrow, that's great. And if you're able to spread the word in your network about anybody who's interested in learning about their existing business and how to protect it and make it more secure and better for sustainable success, we welcome them to join us tomorrow.
Dr. David?
I think everyone's heard me talk enough today. As we said before, thank you everyone so much for being here. And remember, failure to plan is planning to fail. So if you are serious about taking your business to the next level, I would highly recommend you all stop in tomorrow for tomorrow's webinar. Do we actually discuss the next steps when you already have your business up and running?
Yes. Thank you again. Gracias, muito obrigada. Thank you for joining, and please spread the word, and we look forward to welcoming you all tomorrow, 3 p.m. So thank you very much. Bye, everybody.